The world today exists in a state of profound unease. Global powers, once bound by shared interests, now eye each other with suspicion and distrust. Economic competition fueled by nationalism further strains these relationships. The rules-based international order, painstakingly built after the devastation of World War II, shows signs of fraying. Instability, like a virus, seems to be spreading. Regional conflicts simmer, threatening to boil over and engulf neighboring states. The spectre of terrorism, while not a new threat, continues to cast a long shadow across the globe. Non-state actors armed with advanced weaponry and fueled by extremist ideologies add another layer of complexity to an already volatile mix. This uncertainty has seeped into the collective consciousness of people worldwide. The threat of a large-scale conflict, once a distant nightmare, now feels uncomfortably close for many. While this fear is understandable, it is essential to approach this topic with a measured and analytical perspective. Panicked pronouncements help no one. Instead, we must engage in a sober and clear-eyed assessment of the current geopolitical climate. Only then can we understand the true probability of a Third World War and, more importantly, identify the steps necessary to avert such a catastrophe. The current global landscape is marred by a multitude of interconnected tensions. The rivalry between the United States and China, often described as a new Cold War, sits at the epicenter of this unease. This competition, primarily economic and technological, has increasingly spilled over into the political and military realms, raising concerns about a potential escalation. The ongoing war in Ukraine has further destabilized the international order. Russia's invasion, a blatant violation of international law, has shattered Europe's sense of security and reignited fears of a broader conflict. The conflict has also exposed the limitations of the international community in responding to such crises. The Middle East remains a cauldron of instability. The Syrian civil war, though less intense than in previous years, continues to exert a destabilizing influence on the region. The Iranian nuclear program and its ballistic missile development remain significant concerns for regional and global security. These are just a few of the many pressure points that keep the world on edge. Each, in isolation, poses a significant challenge. Taken together, they create a complex and volatile web of interconnected tensions that could, under the wrong circumstances, unravel with devastating consequences. To understand the current geopolitical climate, it is instructive to look back at history, particularly the events leading up to the two world wars. While history may not repeat itself precisely, it often rhymes. Recognizing these rhymes can provide valuable insights into the present and help us avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. One striking parallel is the rise of nationalism. In the early 20th century, fervent nationalism, fueled by economic hardship and social unrest, poisoned relations between European powers, creating a tinderbox atmosphere that ultimately ignited into war. Today, we see a resurgence of nationalism in many parts of the world, often intertwined with populism and anti-globalization sentiment. Another similarity is the breakdown of international cooperation. The League of Nations, created after World War I to prevent future conflicts, proved woefully inadequate. Hampered by its own internal divisions and a lack of political will among its members, it failed to address the growing threats of the 1930s. The current international order, while more robust than its predecessor, faces similar challenges. The lessons of history are clear, unchecked nationalism, unaddressed grievances, and a failure of international cooperation can have catastrophic consequences. Recognizing these echoes of the past is crucial as we navigate the current turbulent waters of international relations. Section 4: Flashpoints, where sparks could ignite. While a global conflict is not inevitable, several regions represent potential flashpoints where miscalculation, accident, or deliberate escalation could ignite a wider war. These areas warrant close attention and careful diplomacy to mitigate the risk of a larger conflagration. The South China Sea, with its overlapping territorial claims and vital shipping lanes, remains a potential flashpoint. China's increasingly assertive posture in the region, coupled with the US's commitment to freedom of navigation, creates a dangerous mix. Any miscalculation or accident in these contested waters could quickly escalate into a broader conflict. The Korean Peninsula, a long-standing area of concern, has witnessed renewed tensions in recent years. North Korea's continued development of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles, combined with its unpredictable behavior, poses a significant threat to regional stability. Any military action on the peninsula could quickly draw in regional powers and potentially escalate into a wider conflict. Eastern Europe, scarred by the ongoing war in Ukraine, remains a volatile region. The potential for the conflict to spill over into neighboring NATO countries, whether through accident or design, is a constant concern. Any such escalation would trigger NATO's Article 5, committing the alliance to collective defense and potentially leading to a wider war with Russia. Section 5. Charting the unthinkable. Scenarios and outcomes. While predicting the future is impossible, it is prudent to consider potential scenarios and outcomes. Examining different possibilities allows us to better understand the complexities of the current geopolitical landscape and explore potential consequences of various actions or inactions. One scenario involves a regional conflict escalating into a wider war. For example, a miscalculation in the South China Sea could lead to a military clash between the US and China. Depending on the severity of the initial engagement and the political will on both sides, this conflict could escalate, drawing in allies and expanding the geographic scope of the war. Another scenario involves a cyber attack spiraling out of control. A state-sponsored cyber attack on critical infrastructure, such as power grids or financial systems, could inflict significant damage and prompt a retaliatory response. In the absence of clear attribution or established norms for cyber warfare, such an event could quickly escalate into a broader conflict. The outcomes of a Third World War are too horrific to contemplate. The use of nuclear weapons, even on a limited scale, would have devastating humanitarian and environmental consequences. The global economy would collapse and international cooperation would likely cease. The world would be plunged into a new dark age from which it might take generations to recover. Section 6. The imperative of hope. While the current geopolitical climate is undeniably fraught with danger, it is not without hope. The challenges we face are daunting, but they are not insurmountable. The path to a more peaceful and secure future requires a concerted effort from all nations, based on dialogue, cooperation, and a shared commitment to international law and order. We must strengthen international institutions such as the United Nations and empower them to address global challenges effectively. Diplomacy and dialogue, however difficult or frustrating, must remain the primary tools for resolving disputes. We must also invest in conflict prevention and peace-building efforts to address the root causes of instability and violence. Ultimately, the fate of the world rests in the hands of its people and their leaders. By embracing diplomacy, cooperation, and a shared commitment to peace, we can navigate the current turbulent waters and build a more secure and prosperous future for all. The alternative is too horrific to contemplate.